It's in my head. The music is in my head. Hey, welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. This crazy guy over here is Ken Coughlin, and that crazy guy over there is
Ben Lander.
And thank you very much for joining us. This is your first time joining the show. I'll tell you a little bit about what it's all about. That little byline down there at the bottom, or tagline, I should say, at the bottom of the screen says it all. We are water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective, which means what we try to do is we try to talk about whatever people out there in the world are talking about, but what makes the show unique is we do it uniquely from a Christian perspective. So everything you're hearing everybody talking about, everybody thinks people are ranting and raving about on social media, what would it look like if we talked about these things as if we actually put Christ first? That's what we try to do. You can be the judge of whether we succeed in doing that or not. This is a discussion program, obviously, between the people here in this room, but not just between the people in this room. You are invited to be part of the show as well. We want to hear what you think, so let us know what you think. Do you agree with us, disagree with us? Do that is by commenting in the comment section, joining the chat. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, on the Trinity Joppa YouTube channel, you put your comment in the live chat. If you're watching us on the Trinity Joppa Facebook page, you can just put it on the comment section there under the live feed of the Facebook page. And when you do that, in either location, your comment will appear in that magic box to Ben's left. That way you'll know it got through. And you do that, I will see it hopefully here on my screen in front of me. If I don't, my lovely wife, our producer back there, we can't find her signs. She used to have signs that she would hold up to tell me YouTube comment, Facebook comment. I think BA stole them. Honestly, I think BA stole them. That's the test to see if BA is watching. And so she's just going to throw hard objects at me if I miss it. I think that's what's going to happen.
Print stickers for us.
Yeah.
Sticker printer.
See? Nobody's commented yet. Don't. Stop. Okay. The point is, we'll see your comment, and as soon as there's a break in the conversation, I will read it live on the air, and we'll interact, and we'll respond. So, please, I don't. Where's the what?
The Sharpie.
The Sharpie? I don't know where the Sharpie is. Probably. Didn't we use it for something? So it's
probably to write something.
Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. You're brilliant. So anyway, so that's how the show works. Please join in. We got 4 topics to get through tonight, so we do want to get started, but we got a couple off-the-top things we have to do before we get started. And the first one, I'm going to shut up about because it's all you. And go.
Yeah, so if you are a member of our congregation and you haven't heard yet, then I hate to break the news this way, but no, I mean, you're watching us now. So if you've not seen it already, I sent a letter out as well as a video that went up on our Facebook page just making the announcement that as of Sunday, November the 7th, I will no longer be on staff here at Trinity. I have accepted a call to be a lead pastor at a church called St. Andrew Evangelical Lutheran up in Muncie, Pennsylvania, and I begin that on Sunday, November the 14th. So, again, just want to reiterate to all of you who have been our faithful watchers, thank you for your conversation. It's been wonderful to have with you. And I've got 2 more. I've got tonight and then 2 more episodes because one of those weeks I'll be away as well. So still have 2 more episodes here on Trinity Talk Live, but, could be back. Who knows? Just to do a couple fill-in episodes here and there. But again, I just want to reiterate just my sincere gratitude and prayers for all of you, our viewers, and just excited to see what opportunities God has for my family and I, and we'll continue to interact with you all through this, and we'll miss you all dearly.
And I'm sure before too long we'll be seeing SATL, St. Andrew Talk Live, right?
Hey, that'd be cool. We can do like a little collaboration.
Yeah,
cool.
So we're going to miss Ben, obviously. I will say, if anybody's watching this live, do me a favor. Don't ask me questions right now as far as what it means for the future of the show. Those decisions haven't been made, and frankly, tonight's not the night to talk about it. Anyway, tonight is the night to say thank you.
Well, thank you
for everything that you've done. Ben stepped up. For those of you that have been longtime viewers of the show, what you see right now, this format, this was not anything like. As a matter of fact, I have an idea if I can book him for our last episode with you. I gotta. He never watches the show, but I want to see if maybe we can get Ryan on the show.
That'd be cool.
Because that would be cool.
Two bookends.
Two bookends. Because the very first episode ever of Trinity Talk Live, episode 1, was Ben, myself, and Ryan McAllister, and the topic was
how much is too much, right?
close. How busy is too busy?
How busy is too busy? Yeah.
And obviously, none of us took our advice, whether we were pitching out in that. So, but no, I think that'd be kind of neat if we can make it work. I don't know if Ryan can make it work with the schedule or not, because the show also wasn't live back then, so we could film it during the normal business day.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's funny because the evolution of the show was that, when we first started, we decided, we want to talk about current events, but we're going to have a main topic of the day. And so we would talk about current events for like 10 minutes, and then we'd go dive into our main topic, whatever it was. But as we started booking guests, we would book guests because it wasn't just the two of us. I mean, Ben was the most frequent guest on the show, but we didn't have Ray. It was me, and I was the host, and I would have a whole bunch of different guests based on whatever the topic was.
You've had Reese, Pastor Jay,
and we've had a lot of outside people. We did a lot of location ones. We went out to Found in Faith Ministries. We did one there. We did what's the homeless shelter?
Welcome One.
Welcome One. We did one on site at Welcome One, and so it was a really. I'm proud of everything we've done with this show, and that format kind of ran its course. But what we found, it was kind of funny, is we'd book guests, like let's say we booked someone from Welcome One, homeless shelter. Well, we were booked because that was going to be our main topic, and so they would want to talk about Welcome One. And then they say, but we need to talk about current events for 10 minutes first. It's like, really? What? Huh? And I think by the time we did the Welcome One show, we'd already gotten rid of it. But so we kind of phased out and got rid of the current events segment entirely, and then just did the main topics. And like any show, if you watch Dr. Phil or anything like that, or Maury Povich, what you find out after a while? They end up repeating the same topics because eventually you kind of run out of stuff, to do it on.
Maury Povich. Yeah. He's only known for one thing.
And then we had somebody who really liked the current events part and asked us to bring it back, and then we created
another show that was just supposed to be current events that was
in the world.
In the world. It was kind of a mix of news reporting and some commentary in there. It wasn't live, it wasn't interactive. And so we ended up, kind of shifting the focus of Trinity Talk Live. This was almost 2 years ago now, to just what you see in this current format of kind of current event talk from a Christian perspective. And one thing I decided that I wanted to do when we did that was, to get rid of the whole booking different guests every week and have a regular co-host that you'd be splitting duties with. And of course, the first guy I asked was the guy who had already been on the show more than anybody else to begin with. And that was Ben. And he said yes right away, even though this was committing him to a live show in the evening every night, every Wednesday night. And so thank you for that.
It's been great. And, I really have to say thank you, Ken. And it's been really just the evolution of this, and Mary Kay, both of you, all that you have done. And just remembering the early days of Trinity Talk, watching Mary Kay. And for those of you behind the scenes, we didn't used to have just one shot continuous like this. Mary Kay would run from like shot to shot when we were in the sanctuary and everything. So
and we had one camera that would only record for 12 minutes at a time. Yeah. So she kept having to stop it and start it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was the first episodes where the side shots, we only had two cameras. One that would be the wide shot, and then the two side shots was one camera, and I would run back and forth with the camera. And one time I was in the middle of a show and the tripod broke. that
was a fun one.
So that was me holding it up and trying to tape it at the same time.
So how many years? It's been 4.5 years now, I guess, since that, because it was. I think we started in the first episodes were in June, so not quite 4.5. I think we're coming up on like 4.5 years that we've been doing the show in some format or another. So.
Just the growth that the channel and everything has had is really a testament to you guys and your hard work. So thank you.
And and to everybody watching, it's a testament to them too. So we really appreciate it. So, Ben is back next week. We'll be doing a show. Angel Elberson gives us a big old heart on
Angel
on Facebook. So Ben will be back. We'll be back at the show next week. Then you're off the following week. Honestly, we're probably, I'll decide by next week, but we're probably just going to take that week off because I got a lot of stuff going on. For those who don't know, I'm currently trying to write a book and get a Bible study started.
Join his class because it's going to be on
It's going to be live streamed. And Angel now says, "Hey Ben," right back at you. So yeah, on Thursday, October 28th at 7:00 p.m., we are starting it's a 6-week Bible study, but it'll be over 7 weeks because one of those Thursdays is Thanksgiving. We're not meeting on Thanksgiving night. On understanding evil from a Christian perspective. It's all about the problem of evil. How can there be how could a good God exist and allow the type of evil and things we see in the world? It's going to be a pretty deep dive. So I got to work and get all that started. So taking a week off that might be good timing for me. But then the following week, which will be November 4th, 5th, something like that.
Yeah,
Whatever that
something like
Wednesday is, first Wednesday in November, we'll be back on the air again. Ben will be back. That'll be his last episode. So we'll dunk him with something or whatever on that
Oh, we
night.
could get a dunk tank.
Or I'll just shoot him with silly string. So
you go.
you have to tune in to see.
So I mean, your office would be covered in silly stuff.
That's true. For that episode, we'll be filming in Ben's office. And then he'll be leaving, and somebody else will have to clean it up.
Oh, so your guest next week will be one of the custodial staff. We could book Al or Miss Margie or Miss Norma.
Al would kill me.
No,
Kill me.
Miss Margie would kill you.
Margie would kill me because he'd delegate her. Yes. All right.
Take you out.
So let's get going though on the show proper here. We do
Wait,
have what?
Can I just unfortunately I just want to update people on Alta
Mm-hmm.
Fixler. They've lost their legal battle. The parents have lost their legal battle to get her to be able to bring her home and have the withdrawal of the life support to happen in their apartment. The judge ruled that she said that removing her life support in a children's hospice best accommodates Alta's welfare need for special care at the end of her life under a reliable, safe, and sustainable system of high caliber care, protected from disruption, whilst allowing, insofar as possible and consistent with Alta's best interests, the family and the community to perform the sacred religious obligations of the Orthodox Jewish faith.
Yeah, we've been covering, for they don't know, we've been covering the story for a long time. Alta Fixler, a daughter of Orthodox Jews in UK, that basically had other avenues available, other hospitals in other countries that were willing to continue to treat her. The doctors in the UK said, no, it's hopeless. She's going to pass. And the state basically said, we know better than the parents. We're not letting her go to these other places. And now that she's passing away in hospice, they're saying, and we're not going to let you bring her home either. It's a horribly sad story where the parents have been completely neglected and their interests have been completely neglected.
But we'll try to let you perform your religious.
Yeah, we'll
Even
try.
though you can't get to her, and
Right.
yeah, it's
Well, and yeah, and and I don't know if I pointed this out before, but because they're Hasidic Jews, they're not even allowed to use cars on
right. So they have to walk
the
to
Sabbath.
the
So they have to
hospital.
walk to the hospital, which is not, several hours walk.
Wow.
So let's talk about our comment from last week, and this is from Brian Brownell. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
He was in this one. We talked about Virginia gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe last week, and his comment essentially that parents should just let school boards decide what their students learn, and basically should not really have input. At least this is how it's been taken. Parents shouldn't have any input into what kids learn in school. And Brian said, Terry McAuliffe is communicating his opposition to the domestic extremists, parentheses parents, led by Matt Walsh in Loudoun County. And he may need to in order to secure the staunchly Democratic suburban Washingtonian vote. I will say this, because, Brian, I don't know if this is... I don't want to assume something is tongue-in-cheek if it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I've misinterpreted you, I apologize. I'm going to assume that the comment is not, and then we can go from there. And then if it is, and you just agree with everything I say, then okay, here we are. Obviously, we're going to talk about inappropriate ways to refer to parents that want to be involved in their children's education in our first story for tonight.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess if I would agree on this ground that I, like any politician, he's trying to appeal to a certain base, and that is probably what Terry McAuliffe is attempting to do. Now, I don't know if it's really succeeded. It sounds to me more like it might have backfired as far as at least any chance of getting an independent vote. But we'll see. You never know what's going to happen. So to this extent that he's trying to appeal to a certain base, I mean, I agree. I guarantee that's where his comment came from. The comment, in my mind, like I said last week, was still, well, just say pretty short-sighted, I think.
Yeah, and I would agree, just like you said, that it's pretty obvious he's trying to appeal to a certain constituency. And we've lost the art of nuance, where you either have to be firmly one side or the other side.
We'll be talking about that in this first story, too.
Yeah, exactly. And so just a statement like that, a blanket statement, just you're going to polarize people because it is just a blanket statement. I don't believe that parents should, I'm quoting him, I don't believe that parents should have a say in their children's education. And so you're going to ruffle a lot of feathers.
How do you not
especially
know
parents.
that some people are going to be very mad at you when you say that?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Like you said, very short-sighted.
Yeah. All right. Let us move on. And for those of you that don't know, the way that works is we do want, even though this is a live show, and we've invited people to be part of the live chat, as Angel already has. Thank you, Angel. You can see how that works. We know not everybody can necessarily watch us live. I mean, maybe you're on the West Coast and it's only 2:30 when we start out there and you're still at work. We get that. We still want you to feel like you're part of the program. And so the way you do that is if you're watching us after the fact and you have a comment or a question, go ahead and leave it in the comment section on the YouTube channel, not the Facebook post, because that's a little bit harder for us to dig up sometimes, but the YouTube channel. And then we will go through it at the start of the next week's show. We will take up the comments that were left on the last week's episode, and we will talk about those off the top. So please feel free to do that. Anyway, we do have 4 stories today. Let's get to our first main topic of the evening. And Mr. Lander, what is it?
So this story really kind of ties into Mr. Brownell's comment in regards to parents versus school boards. This one article we get, did all of these come from Allison Mayer? I think so.
All 4 of the stories?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Or no. Well, I think the Pelosi one maybe you introduced.
I mean,
this one I think at least came from Allison.
This is largely an Allison Mayer show, if not completely tonight. So thank you, Allison, as always, for helping us out. And we're going to give her associate producer credit
right?
for the number of times she helps us pick out stories. So
hey, if you want to come on Trinity Talk in 4 weeks. No, 5. It'd be 5. No, 4.
Wait, let's not do.
I don't know.
Let's
Anyway.
not try math.
So anyway, this story, it's from a couple of different sources. This one is from NPR, referring to. I mean, you've probably heard this story from a number of different outlets if you kind of diversify your news consumption. But speaking of school boards that have decided to ask for federal help as they face threats and violence, or what they're classifying as threats and violence. So there's been an uptick of rallies and parents coming out to school board meetings, and which used to be just kind of very mundane, have turned into kind of, let's just say, very opinionated places of discussion right now. We already kind of covered the situation in Loudoun County that is also referenced here, but there have been other places such as all over the place: California, Georgia, Florida, Illinois, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Wisconsin, Wyoming. Those are some of the states that have been referenced in this appeal from the National Board of Education. Have written a letter to the Biden administration requesting FBI intervention, basically. Not just FBI, but the Department of Justice, Education, and Homeland Security, as well as the FBI, stating that these boisterous demonstrations could be, quote, heinous actions, could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. So the Board of Education are pointing to very specific incidents, such as, crowds chanting "shame on you," such as in Loudoun County. We covered that one a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. There's other ones where mobs are, quote, yelling obscenities, throwing objects. One particular incident where a protester supposedly brandished a flagpole against a school board official. Other cases include a protester yelling Nazi salutes, and then there's been arrests for aggravated battery and disorderly conduct. There's also been a couple instances of death threats against public officials. So there's been like hate mail and things like that. And really what surrounds all of this vitriol toward school administrators and educators is really, it's centered around mainly two issues. It's the mask policies that the schools have adopted as far as COVID and everything, as well as their curriculum, specifically in regards to critical race theory and whatever that encompasses, how that is being taught, and I guess to another degree LGBTQ plus inclusion and all of that. So it's really comes down to curriculum and mask policies is what parents are all up in arms about. And so citing all of these examples that I just shared, there was a letter that was sent from the NSBA, the National School Board Association, to the White House requesting federal aid in not only, there's a couple things in here that got me, but I'll let you comment on them first. But in this letter here that they wrote, it says, coupled with attacks against school board members and educators for approving policies for masks to protect the health and safety of students and school employees, many public school officials are also facing physical threats because of propaganda purporting false inclusion of critical race theory within classroom instruction and curricula. So it's classifying it as propaganda, again, as this other article has stated that it's classified as hate speech and everything like this. But they're requesting, this one is one that kind of got me, and I'll get maybe your take on it. They say, we also request the assistance of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service to intervene against threatening letters and cyberbullying attacks. So now they want to pull letters from the mail that could possibly be mean.
How is the Postal Service supposed to know whether they're threatening without opening the mail?
I guess they got to open every single piece of mail. I don't know exactly how they plan to enforce that one. But anyway, so this letter went to the White House, and now actually the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has responded in response to this letter that was sent to the White House and has ordered the FBI and federal prosecutors to meet with state, local, and law enforcement leaders to look into these cases and possibly into how they might be able to enforce further these requests. So, what do you make of it?
I think it's important that we start out with something that so it does not get lost in the shuffle. I don't care whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right, whether you agree with your school board, whether you disagree with your school board, if you are making death threats, if you are committing acts of violence, if you are acting otherwise than with grace, even 1 Peter 3:15, always be prepared to give an answer to anyone asks for a reason for the hope they have, but do this with gentleness and respect. You can disagree with someone and be pointed about it, but still be gentle and respectful. Mm-hmm. If you are behaving in any way other than that, you are not behaving in a Christian manner. Okay, you're not. And so people that will hear what I'm going to say from this point onward and accuse me of, condoning what I've already kind of tipped my hat, haven't I? Condoning.
You can speak with grace, but you can also season it with salt.
Yeah,
it does say that in
there.
But
I do not condone genuine threats, violence, anything. And from a Christian perspective, I don't condone people acting other than with gentleness and respect while being firm and holding to the truth. Okay. So please do not think that I'm going to say that this is all, I'm condoning those actions. I'm not. Okay. I cannot state more certainly, I soundly condemn those actions. Okay. Period. No discussion. Now, getting to the specifics of this, just because I agree with, this letter that was sent from the school board, from the perspective, or this collection of school boards rather, just because I agree that we should be soundly condemning those particular acts, does not mean I therefore have to agree with everything you put in the letter and everything you said and the way you went about doing it. All right? Because I don't. All right? Because a lot of this is, dangerous. Well, first of all, let's just talk about it from a legal perspective. Even if we're just talking about those particular acts, all right, the acts where people are making threats, who are committing violent acts, physical violence, that's not a federal issue. Okay, it's not a federal issue. And so when I see the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, instructing federal law enforcement to get involved in this, you're beyond your jurisdiction. People should be punished and held accountable for these things, but they should be punished and held accountable by local law enforcement. And when I see the feds doing this, I'm sorry, the first thing I think is, oh, well, that's political. I mean, it's just political. It's the same thing we were talking about with Terry McAuliffe. You're doing things to appeal to a base. Merrick Garland does not have the authority. The FBI does not have the authority to go and prosecute individual assault cases that happen at such and such county school board. The jurisdiction's just not there. So you're doing this purely as a political ploy. And the reason that irks me is because your job, Mr. Attorney General, at that point is to say, hey, this is beyond our jurisdiction. Take your concerns. We think your concerns are legitimate, but you need to take them to local law enforcement, address it with them. When you take this other step, all you do is perpetuate this kind of behavior. So now the next time something happens that has nothing to do with the federal government, people are going to want to get the feds involved. You validated that part of it. So I can go into more later, but I'm curious what you thought about that aspect of it.
I mean, I'm always curious. I'm always cautious whenever the government reaches in and gets involved in local issues. And I totally agree that it is a local law enforcement issue. And I mean, I guess to their credit, Merrick Garland was stating not necessarily that the FBI is going to prosecute or anything, but that they are working with local.
To what end? I mean, it's still the same problem.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I don't think that, excuses it at all. And I guess what gets me is the entire premise of it is that they are, okay, so if the FBI is getting involved, if the Department of Homeland Security is getting involved looking for
where you going now?
Domestic terrorists, then what you're presupposing is that this is an organized collective of angry parent mobs that are actively working to undermine our education system, which I frankly find very hard to believe. I think these are incidents that are growing because the information is being spread out there, and people, and we can have that discussion whether it's misinformation or true information, and whether or not critical race theory is what they're saying versus what the parents are saying it is. But I just don't think it's there, and I challenge the FBI to find it there that these parents are actually colluding in some sort of domestic terrorism plot.
And that's what bothers me also about the fact that he's getting in, because as much as you can try to say, and I've seen people say this, well, the Attorney General didn't call people domestic terrorists. The Attorney General didn't say they're committing hate crimes. That was just this letter from the National School Boards Association. Okay, but the only even slightly articulable justification for the feds getting involved is if it is some kind of terrorism,
right.
And so even though there is no argument, I mean, that's the kind of thing we talk about all the time on the show. It's like, the hyperbole that just gets ridiculous. These are acts, even the stuff that I have soundly condemned and will continue to soundly condemn, are acts of assault and that type of localized criminal behavior. They're not domestic terrorism. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. That's you just trying to fan the flames of hate and anger against people who, for those that are doing that, and we'll get into the broader application of this in a minute, how I think it does tend to sweep in more than just the people who are committing these acts, but the chilling effect, I should say, that it can have. But when you do that, you're just creating, again, this us versus them. Everybody else is evil. Oh, these people have done something that I've acknowledged to you is wrong. They're terrorists. Let's call them terrorists to make it seem all that more extreme than it really is. And when the Attorney General turns around and says, oh, yeah, let's look into that, he's validating that. And that's irresponsible. And the hate crimes thing, look, here's what a hate crime is. Okay, a hate crime is a crime that's committed against a protected class for the reason that they are a member of that protected class.
School boards are not protected classes.
Yeah, that's what I think. And so if I commit a crime, I don't want to say me because that's going to make me look bad, but if someone commits a crime against someone because of their race, that's a hate crime. And there is, and people may disagree with me on this, I tend to agree, there's an added element to that above just an ordinary assault. So I don't have a problem with hate crimes as long as they are defined properly and they're handled properly. We should be punishing that. right, school boards are not a protected class. There's nothing even remotely resembling a hate crime. Here's why that language is used, though, I suspect. It's because of the things that are being, well, you're opposing this critical race theory being taught in the school, therefore it's a hate crime. No, that's not what a hate crime means. A hate crime means to be a crime committed against someone who is a member of a protected class. And so that's where, when you use language like this, what I was saying before, it tends to make the issue broader, and you kind of lose the defense that, oh, we're only talking, in the Attorney General, we're only talking about people who have actually committed these types of assaults, not the people who have just voiced opposition and expressed their opinions. Because when you use the language like hate crimes in such an obviously inappropriate context, now the only reason you use that language is because of the content of their opinions.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where it starts to take on a broader context, and a more dangerous context.
Yeah, it morphs from hate crime to thought crime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really,
because
I mean,
the
let's
only
call it
hate
what it is.
that you can try to, the only thing you're calling hate, I mean, not you, our viewers, I just mean the school board association here, the hate that they would be pointing to is the thought that is behind these people's opinions, which we've talked about in the show, they label as hate, because lots of times, anytime you disagree with something, you must hate it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of, and this also goes into kind of an anecdotal story about, what was the lady's name?
Solas, I think was her name,
Miss Solas, yeah.
Nicole Solas.
Nicole Solas, yeah. And she gives, no, take it with a grain of salt. It's anecdotal. This is her story. But she kind of shares a story in this article about how her experience it really began with her asking questions of her local principal, because she was enrolling her daughter in kindergarten that year and wanted to know what was being taught and how it was being taught in the classroom. And the principal answered those, but then any further questions, she had to submit a request as a public information request, I think, to the school board.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, I guess she ended up, because every single question that she had to be submitted separately, so it ended up being like 160 different requests that she submitted. Well, then the school board decided to sue her, or discussed suing her, and she shares kind of really a chilling kind of story about how she was brought, kind of like a mock trial, how they brought, just like we were saying, judgments against her character, how these have to be politically motivated, how she has to have a certain ideology, they're ideologically motivated, and that's the reason why you're asking us these questions, when a lot of these questions are fair questions, such as, how are you teaching it? If you're teaching this in an age-appropriate way, the principal, for example, said, we don't use the term boys and girls, we don't use gendered terminology. Well, then how do you address your students? What do you teach them about sexuality, so it's not just race, it's sexuality, it's the whole gamut of progressive ideology that she's having questions about and wanting to know how her school is teaching this. And they didn't really, apparently, I guess, not give her outright answers, but then decided just to put her on blast at this school board meeting. And come to find out, they decided not to sue her, although they
did try to school her, but
yeah, right. But the teachers union now is suing her, which is this crazy story, and I worry about where it goes from there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because her story illustrated, I think, kind of okay, no secret here, I don't like the media, even though by doing the show I'm kind of part of it. But it's a weird love-hate relationship. But we did, just so people understand, we were balanced. We actually are kind of reading here off of two different stories from two different political slants, because all media has a political slant now. One story from NPR, the other one from the Daily Signal, which is more right-wing oriented. And I have issues with both of them. I mean, just, the Daily Signal one, which you're reading from Miss Solis' story from, only because the whole tone of that is, we have a parent here who, they're trying to tie it to Merrick Garland, even though Merrick Garland really doesn't have anything to do with her story, because they're saying, she's saying, go ahead, Merrick Garland, arrest me. Okay, well, what the Attorney General is at least claiming to do is not to go after people. Now, we talked about the different difficulties of this, but he's not claiming to go after people because of their views that they're expressing. He's claiming to want to investigate people who are committing assaults, making threats, things like that, which he's not doing. All right. And so there is, on some of the right-wing media, there is, I think, an over desire to try to draw this equivalency. It's like, if I were Merrick Garland, she says, arrest me, I'd be looking at her and say, why? You know, that, so that kind of attempted connection was a bit problematic for me. But NPR, lo and behold, of course, is very, very left wing. And they were talking about, critical race theory and we've talked about my position on that show before. Do I think that there is racism within our individual pockets of our institutions? Is there racism within police forces and things like that? Yes, there is. I mean, we're fallen people, and when that happens, we need to address it. We need to pull it out. My issue with by and large and short term with critical race theory is the fact that it tries to generalize, where it basically says the institutions themselves are therefore inherently corrupt and racist, and that's a generalization which is. I'm not going to go into the whole thing now, but is incorrect in my mind and unfair.
And there again, you've lost that nuance, and so it's just a blanket statement.
It's a blanket statement. That's what it is. When you shift to the institutions are groups of people. That's what they're made up of. And so when you say an institution is X and you don't allow for exceptions, then what you're in nuance, like you're saying, then you're basically saying all the people who make up that institution are X. Mm-hmm. Well, all the people that make up that institution aren't X. And so Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that, but we've talked about that before on the show. But this NPR article says this, about there have been disruptions over, vaccines, the LGBTQ policies and everything like that. And then says also, and the way race and history are taught in schools, which right-wing activists have misleadingly labeled critical race theory. Critical race theory, as this letter points out, meaning the letter from the school boards, is an advanced topic taught in law schools and undergraduate sociology courses. All right. And yet, you turn around and you look at Miss Solis's testimony, and testimony not in the courtroom sense, but just what she says and how she describes her experience. She says that after the part you were talking about, that I'm not using gender terminology, she says, and with critical race theory or anti-racism, she had a conversation with the school's principal. And she says, and with critical race theory or anti-racism, which is really the same thing, it's a principle or tenets of critical race theory. She said that they teach children a certain line of thinking about history, also in every grade, at an age-appropriate level. So even the principal in her case didn't deny that they were teaching critical race theory. She just tried to say, we're teaching it at an age-appropriate level. And so when I saw this comment from NPR, what I thought was, saying that critical race theory, that they're not really teaching critical race theory because critical race theory is an advanced topic that's taught in law schools and undergraduate sociology courses, is like me saying that if I teach what goes up must come down, I'm not really teaching the law of gravity because I didn't say that the force equals the gravitational constant times the mass of object 1 times the mass of object 2 over the distance between their centers squared. Right. I mean, it's like, no, you're still teaching it, but you're teaching at an age-appropriate level. And we can have an open and honest... I think, for example, we should have conversations about whether institutions are inherently racist. I think that's a conversation we can have as a society. I don't think they are. I've explained my reasons why. But that's a legitimate conversation to have. But the discussion, at the same time, then, that means that parents who elect school boards should be entitled to have a voice in whether or not they're very young children, elementary age children, are being taught that in their schools, especially when even the adults can't agree about whether this theory accurately describes our society and accurately describes reality or not. And you are teaching it. When you say you're doing it at an age-appropriate level, that's just like saying what comes up must come down. You're still teaching the law of gravity.
Well, that's a good example. And specifically what they state, from Ms. Solis's story is that in kindergarten, specifically in kindergarten, they asked the children what could have been done differently on the first Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's a very leading question, and it's designed specifically to get them to talk about race. Not that I'm saying it's...
It could be, I guess my question is, I don't have a problem talking about the question of, let's get an accurate historical understanding of what happened there. Right. But we're talking about kindergartens. Right. So you're at kindergarten, you're not having a legitimate historical evaluation about the pros and cons of, what happened and whether it was colonization or whatever.
Yeah, and another reason I think that's kind of an inappropriate question for a kindergartner is because that also misses the childhood development cycles. Children at the kindergarten level don't really have that robust of an ability for abstract thought. When you ask them what should have happened, I mean, you can ask them what they should have done if they made a wrong choice or something like that, and I guess extrapolate that to the colonies. But that's a very, like I said, a leading question, and they don't really have that capacity yet, even, and so that really is designed to set the foundation there for further building on that critical race theory.
Well, and it also gets back to what we've talked about before. When I was, I hate to say this, back in the day when I was growing up, you went to school and you learned the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Don't get me started. I know that's only actually 1 R. But
it's the second one.
yeah. But only one word that starts with R. Yeah. And you learned, and even with history, you learned, what happened in history. So if you got a history course that talks about what happened at that first Thanksgiving, and you want to accurately depict that, that's one thing. But then to go ask the kids to make a judgment call, well, what could have been different? I just don't think that's an appropriate question at a kindergarten level.
Right.
So anyway, so it's like excuses, and that's why I don't really read NPR that much, because every time I do, I get a statement like that. That's like, all right, you just shifted from reporting the news to commenting on the news under an article that you were supposedly reporting on, and to say right-wing activists misleadingly say, no. Okay, we can talk about whether critical race theory is true or not. I think it's a perfectly legitimate conversation to have. But when you try to say we're not really teaching it, you're not fooling anybody.
Right.
Yeah, you are. You're just teaching it at a level, the what comes up must come down level.
It's even a political statement by saying who is saying it. They say right-wing activists are saying this. Like, okay, come on, NPR.
It's a loaded thing. And I guess that's just what annoys me. It's like, just like I said, the other article annoyed me in the sense that I thought it was really stretching to try to make the Merrick Garland connection with this Solisa story. It's like, can we just not do that? Can we just get past this tendency, this desire we seem to have in society today to label those are the bad guys, we're the good guys, we can never get along with you, we can never agree with anything, because it gets in the way of us actually boiling things down and analyzing them, for truth. Mm-hmm. So anyway, sorry, pet peeve of mine. And the media is the worst offender. Sorry, there we go. One last pot shot of the media.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to our next story, shall we? Ben is a comic book geek, so he decided he wanted to talk about this one tonight. So we're going to let him comment first. I'll read the story. This is a headline from Yahoo Life, actually, that says DC's new Superman comes out as bisexual. Now, in case anybody's freaking out and thinking that poor Lois Lane just got dumped off the altar, this is not Clark Kent. If you are not deeply involved in the lore of Superman, Lois Lane and Clark, if you're not deeply involved, Superman is an alien from outer space from the planet of Krypton. He came to Earth as a baby. He grew up and he got, he had this girlfriend, worked together at the Daily Planet, Lois Lane. They got married. They had a kid, at least one kid. I'm not sure if the comics they have more than one. In the TV show, they have 2 kids.
And then there's he's got a clone, Connor Kent. It gets really, it's good.
You can tell he's into this. But John, named after Clark Kent's Earth father, Jonathan Kent. They have a son named John. John is now Superman. I have no idea if his powers are the same. Really not the point of the conversation tonight. Yeah. But I'm sure Ben could tell us. Anyway, so they had October 11th was National Coming Out Day, and DC Comics announced on I believe it was on October 11th that John Kent, Superman of Earth, and the son of Clark Kent, and this article says Lois Lane, will be coming out as bisexual in the newest issue of Superman, Son of Kal-El, the 5th in the series, to be released on November 9th. And there's a picture here where apparently he's got a friend that has now become a boyfriend. And I think it's the writer, says Tom Taylor. Yeah, he's the writer of the story. So I've always said everyone needs heroes and everyone deserves to see themselves in their heroes. And I'm very grateful DC and Warner Brothers share this idea. Now, Mr. Taylor, this is not his first time in the realm of LGBT characters in the comics. There, along with Tim, Timm, who I think is the artist maybe of the comic. I missed that there.
Yeah.
But they've both been involved, for example, in Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is a Batman anti-hero villain type character who was also bisexual. And then this particular article from Yahoo Life also talks about other characters, a lot of them in DC, some Marvel, that have recently been written as LGBTQ characters, including Batman's sidekick Robin, who came out as bisexual in August. And then, of course, we have the new movie coming out, The Eternals, for the MCU, that's going to have their first homosexual superhero in that. And so this has been something that has been going through the comics world and is now starting to permeate into the comic movie world as well, where we're seeing more and more characters that are, and not, obviously some new characters, but also, some older pre-existing characters, which they are now retconning to say, okay, these characters are actually gay or bisexual, things like that. So what are your thoughts about this latest Superman development, sir?
First of all, it doesn't really surprise me because this is not new in the world of comics. I mean, you can go back into the 70s, 60s, even before then. DC and Marvel are the two major publishers of comic books, and they've been guilty of pushing progressive agendas, for a really long time, and mixing their storytelling with political and societal messages. So, I mean, this is just kind of the latest in that trend, and it's always kind of felt cheap to me, really, for the writers to do that. I mean, it's kind of disingenuous to say, hey, one of the things here, I don't know if you had read this before, but they said the idea of replacing Clark Kent with another straight white savior felt like a missed opportunity. So right there, it tells you that the focus isn't on good story writing. The focus is on virtue signaling. And, and that's kind of what feels cheap to me, is that, if you're going to make a character, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the James Bond thing. If you're going to make a character who a particular subset of the audience can identify with, don't retcon an existing character. Make an brand new character for that subset.
Or you could even do what DC, and I don't know, maybe they did do this. DC is known for like rebooting their entire universe, so you do something like that. I don't know, but
yeah, exactly. And they did that with the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. They made him homosexual, and like you said, Harley Quinn. So I think it's just, to me, I mean, and who's going to comic books to read more about politics? What's I guess, first of all, DC, Marvel, all the other comic book publishers, you need to figure out what your target demographic is, because some of these comic books are not for children. I will say that. And so I guess maybe it can be a little bit more acceptable if it's more towards the adult audience. But I mean, as a kid, you're reading these things. I grew up on comic books as a kid, and that was never in my sphere of what I was coming to a comic book to read about. You come to any kind of media like that to escape reality, not to have an agenda pushed on you. And so that's what feels cheap to me.
Let me write the songs of a nation. I care not who writes its laws. Andrew Fletcher. You say that, you don't think these storylines are appropriate for kids. And I would respond, that's exactly why they're doing them. Because you want to shape the worldview of people, and you do that through children when their worldviews are developing. And the entertainment is one of the number one ways that worldviews get shaped. And so children are going to these comics for entertainment, for what they think is escapism, and then you mask ideology as an escapism as part of the story, and that's how you change a society. That's how you change a culture. Yep. I will say this. Look, just for the record, people want to know, well, are you saying that, DC Comics shouldn't do this? Hey, DC Comics wants to do it. DC Comics can do it. We all know how we feel about, same-sex marriage and homosexuality. I do believe it's sinful. Does that mean that I think that, everybody who identifies that way should be, mistreated? Heck no, of course not. If somebody abuses someone on that ground, will I be right there defending them? Absolutely. I will be your staunchest ally. Do I think that means that, we should have laws that says, publishers can't publish stories about same-sex? No. I mean, we're in a free country. Do I think it says something about the direction of our society that I find unfortunate? Yes. I mean, I do. And I think we as Christians need to be aware that this is how cultures get shaped, so that we can kind of get our views out there as well in manners that do shape cultures. So, when I read the story, my first reaction is I haven't read comics for a long time. And back when I read them, just like you're saying, they were escapism. There was no, I don't want to say there was no political agenda, because, in the civil rights era, there were some comic books were actually at the forefront of that civil rights era in many regards. So that aspect is not anything new. But there's
what about Wonder Woman?
What about Wonder Woman?
Oh well.
the feminist.
the feminist.
movement,
Yeah, I mean, being the very predominant
there's-
female superhero. So it's nothing new that they do have that. I think there's just been a renewed push recently. You would know more than I would about, like you say, the progressive agenda being in comics. And again, if you want to do that, fine. And I can even, as a filmmaker, I can appreciate good stories. And if it makes sense in a story for a certain character to be a certain way, and if it's advancing the story, I have no problem with that. I mean, it may not be my cup of tea. I may not I gotta be honest with you. I go back and forth in this. I'm probably not going to go see the Eternals. I'm probably not.
Wait for it to
hate
come
me
out on
for
Disney
it,
Plus.
but it's just, I might. I have two minds about it because, again, I don't mind there being a same-sex character in there per se. There are same-sex people, homosexual people in the world today. And so that's something that if you're gonna go out in the world, you're gonna see it. And I know that there's people that want, like this says, they want to see characters like that represented. And so if it fits within the story, will I agree with that character's lifestyle? No. Do I think that makes them a horrible person that should be condemned in everything they do? No. Am I going to be entertained by seeing that on screen? This is where it gets into the Eternals, and why about this, and the same thing you're saying, I have my doubts because what I'm seeing, for the most part, is stuff like this. It's not advancing the story.
It's shoehorned
It's
in there.
shoehorned in, and I don't care what characteristic it is. I don't like that because I like good storytelling, and it doesn't strike me as good storytelling.
Yeah, it needs to happen organically.
It needs to happen organically. And I'll give you an example of one that I was better than most as far as being organic, but it's also the same reason I say, well, why do you do this with Superman? Well, because who is Superman as a character? Superman as a character, and I don't know, you can correct me if John Kent is different. I'm not as familiar with John Kent. I go back to Clark Kent. Superman is the champion of truth, justice, and the American way. Superman is the moral center. He's the good guy of good guys. All right. There's no flaws in Superman. Superman is the moral compass. He's the example that we all should be striving to. Who is that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Captain America. All right. So Captain America is the good guy, the moral center of the MCU. So you go back to Avengers Endgame, and there's a scene after the blip where there's a support group going on, and of course, who's helping lead that support group? It's Steve Rogers. It's Captain America, and there's a gentleman in that support group who is talking about his loss, and he just finally started dating again. And of course, who has he started dating? He started dating another man. It's a homosexual character involved in a same-sex relationship. And of course, then what happens? Captain America is affirming him in that. That was relatively organic. I didn't mind that one as much because, in that scenario, there would be people who suffered loss, and obviously there are people in those types of relationships. I don't agree with the relationships, but I'm sure their loss is genuine. But it's like the reason you put Captain America as that character and not one of the other superheroes is not lost on me, okay? Right. I get that. Why? Because you're trying to normalize it. You're trying to push an agenda and say, look, if even the most moral character can agree with this, then who are you to disagree? You obviously must know what's right. Same thing. If even Superman can be bisexual, then it's an obvious, to me, shoehorned attempt to push in the agenda.
Absolutely, and I would agree with that. One thing that we have a comment.
We do hasn't popped up. I see it on the screen up there. It hasn't popped up on my screen here. BA says, I came back to the words MCU, my kind of show.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, hey, BA, thanks for watching us. You can kind of rewind and see what we're talking about.
Yeah, we did talk about you at the very start of the show.
We did.
I accused you of something, just let you know.
And one of the things, I'm going to issue a challenge here to Marvel and DC and any other comic book writer. So this phrase or this quote here, I've always said everyone needs heroes and everyone deserves to see themselves in their heroes. And I'm very grateful DC and Warner Brothers share this idea. When's the last time you've seen a Christian superhero? Like a truly Christian superhero? Like, yeah, supposedly Captain America's Christian or Spider-Man's Christian or whoever. But, they're not going around proselytizing because that would be too much.
Yeah, about the...
I want to see them affirm...
I knew Jay had. Somebody already chimed in on that, yeah. That's Jay. Bible man, yeah.
Okay, Bible man. A well-written. I'm sorry.
And I'll criticize Bible man right with you.
I want to see...
Same thing we're talking about. Christians can do it too. That's a poorly written show.
Yeah.
I want to see a body image a realistic body image superhero.
Look, and I'll give comics somewhat credit with that. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, not to say that it's really taken hold yet.
Oh, and he's brought up Veggie Tales and
Larry Boy.
Larry Boy.
Larry Boy. Now,
Okay,
Larry
better.
Boy is the exception. Larry Boy's
there you go.
awesome.
Mhm.
And Bad Face is better
that's
writing.
not.
Yeah.
But that's not DC or.
Right,
No,
a
but-
mainstream. Yeah.
Oh, you're saying Daredevil is Catholic.
Yeah, but he goes around beating people to a pulp.
Okay, what
I mean-
superhero doesn't?
I know.
But no,
I want a pleasantly plump female superhero who isn't all breasts and doesn't look with small feet like Barbie that looks like she's gonna fall over. every time
okay,
you
then
stand
give
her
me a
up.
male superhero without 6-pack abs. Or
That's
let's
what I'm
face it,
saying.
8-pack abs. I mean, yeah, you know.
true.
This is what
I
I'm
think
saying.
I
Not
should be
every.
Superman.
I'm just saying that there, if everybody deserves it, then
Well, I mean, look, let's face it, and I agree with you in the sense that we see that kind of comment all the time. Well, everybody should be represented. You don't really mean everybody. You mean whoever you agree with. Why don't we just say that? Look, again, DC can write what they want to write.
Right.
You know, I don't. What happened? Frumpy pastor. DC can write what they want to write. Now they're a business, and so there are financial consequences. And let's face it, I'm not going to go into all this, but the comic book industry is not doing well right now.
No.
Sales are plummeting. Okay, and so you need to evaluate, like you say, who's your target audience. But they can do it if they want to. It's not going to be my cup of tea. I'm not going to buy the comic book. But it's a statement, obviously. I guess my point is, like, you can do it if you want to, but it's the same thing kind of last story. Let's just stop fooling ourselves. Let's stop trying to trick people. Just say what you're doing. We know what you're doing. We all see what you're doing.
Right.
You know, you don't really want to have everybody represented. You want to have the worldviews that you want to advance represented. And that's your right. You can do it. Marketplace of ideas. We Christians need to, do that better than Bible man. But yeah, that's what gets to me is just the virtue signaling, the idea that we're just looking for inclusion of everybody. No, you're not. But that's your view. You do what you do you, and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Let's move on, shall we? Next
shall.
story is about Frumpy Pastor. I'm supposed to introduce this one. So this is actually an article that came out of Christian Headlines, and it's this is not a news story. Well, it's reporting on, and I guess it was an article that just came out recently by. Was an interview by Katie Faust, Katy, and the last name is Faust. And she had, I guess, written a recent book, if I remember correctly, titled "What Would You Say?" Or no, it was on the interview was on "What Would You Say?" I'm trying to remember what her credentials were, and I'm missing it.
She was
I was
responding-
in here somewhere,
She
but
was responding to a tweet, and
yeah. But the topic of this particular article, and the article called Unhappily Married or Happily Divorced, Which is Better for Kids? And it begins by talking about, the tagline that we so often hear, kids will be better off with happy parents that aren't married than with unhappy parents that stay married. And Ms. Faust here is challenging that. She does not agree with that statement. And in this interview, she was asked whether or not that statement was true. And she says no, and she gave 3 reasons why she believes that statement is not true. And I think it's an interesting conversation to have. She says, number 1 is that kids don't just get over divorce. Divorce affects children's bodies, minds, and hearts for a very long time. For many kids, divorce kicks off a lifetime of loss and transition. And then she's interesting statistics she cited. She says one study found that nearly half of children with divorced parents had not seen their father in the past year. And the second reason she said why she disagrees with the statement, she said, for kids, 2 homes are not better than 1. According to one long-term study of children of parents who lived in 2 different homes, these children, on average, obtained less education, experienced more unemployment, were more likely to be divorced themselves, presumably when they grew up, faced a greater occurrence of negative life events, and engaged in riskier behavior than their peers raised in intact homes. And I will just say, what intact homes meaning what? Because you've got to talk, the comparison here is parents who are staying together but maybe not happy versus, so there's going to be, I don't know about that statistic, but I'll put a pin in that because you get to comment first. But here's the one that I found most interesting when she's talking about the impact of kids living in two different homes. She says nearly half developed two different personalities. Each home offered different versions of the truth, requiring keeping different secrets and operating under two different sets of rules. And then the third thing she said is that if couples persevere, unhappy marriages often become happy marriages. One study found that a third of unhappy couples with new babies divorced, but of the 2/3 who didn't, 93% reported happy marriages down the line. And then she had another report found that 2/3 of unhappily married adults who chose to stick it out reported happier marriages 5 years later. And I do think, and she does put an important caveat here on the end, talking about cases of abuse. In case of abuse, safety has to be a priority. And in cases of adultery, the marriage might not be reconcilable. But we still can't ignore, even in those situations, there's still a toll on the children. And so her punchline was kind of summed up here. She says there are scenarios in which the harm that divorce inflicts on children is justified. Those abuse cases, adultery cases. She says, but adult happiness is not one of them. That's her conclusion. And Jay Jackson here says, define better. What's the baseline? Define what you mean by better for. And you're right. And that's something anytime you're looking at these studies is the definition of terms. But what was your impression when you read the article?
Largely, I agree with it. I think she gives some solid points. And again, you put a pin in the second one, which I think we can take out here in a second.
You can take out whatever you want. You get to comment first.
Yeah, no, largely I agree. Just anecdotally from what I've seen, I mean, I've got adult friends who grew up in divorced homes who I see exhibiting very much the same things. There's one of the big things lasting into adulthood is a fear of rejection, fear of loss, and that carries into their adult relationships where they then have, they carry that baggage with them. It doesn't just kind of, she's right, kids don't just get over divorce. It's traumatic. I've seen elsewhere, I don't know if it's a statistic per se because I can't quote it, but basically it said for every divorce, about 100 people are affected. And if that divorce is in a church leader or something, then magnify that by 10. So about 1,000 people are affected by every divorce because you think of friends, family, extended.
And if it's the church leader's Joel Osteen, I think it's in the millions, right?
I mean, probably. But yeah, and it's just one more way that the enemy can get in and divide. I mean, look, biblically speaking, from this Christian perspective, the Bible is clear. God hates divorce. That's not to say that there aren't reasons, even biblical reasons, for divorce, in the case of adultery especially, and abuse, I would say. But Jesus himself says, when the teachers of the law were trying to trap him in this, to say, this, what should there be divorce? Because Moses wrote us this law, and then Jesus himself says, yeah, Moses wrote you that law because of the hardness of your hearts. Mainly saying, God doesn't desire divorce, but he recognizes the sinful, fallen nature of humanity, and so sometimes cases like this in abuse and things like that is a justifiable response. But I love that punchline at the end. Adult happiness is not a justifiable response. Amen to that. I always say, I don't believe in love at first sight. Because I believe in infatuation at first sight. There's emotions that get involved with a romantic partner, but love, true love, and we've talked about this before, there's different kinds of love that the English language does not really capture. But true love, the type of love that a husband should have for his wife and a wife for her husband, is sacrificial. It does the hard work of choosing to love that person, even if you don't always feel like it, because you're not always going to feel like it. And in the same way, that's a reflection of God's love for us. He is love, and so we love because he first loved us.
Yeah, I saw that too, Mary Kay. She's holding up the sign here, and I have to apologize to, first of all, to BA, because at some point he put in here, and a lawyer.
About Daredevil.
Oh,
Oh,
Daredevil.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, so see, it is possible to be Christian and a lawyer, Pastor Jay. Sorry. I'm not. He's never accused that of me. He never has. I'm sorry. Don't fire me. But then Brian Brownell, to your point.
Cool.
Hey, another comment coming up? No. Brian says, if you want to ruin the lives of your children, get a divorce. Pastor Jay, wov, twoo, wov. And then Angel
Mileage.
Elberson here on Facebook says, a lot of people jump into marriage based on infatuation, not love, what you're getting at. And what, is there more? You keep laughing over there, okay? BA now says, I just saw the accusation. It's not stolen if it's still in the room in the wrong place. Okay, then
Where
it's
is
on.
it?
Yeah, where is it? Come on, I know you're not here.
Where
so
are my
this is fun.
signs?
I could say, then where is it, BA? If you want to avoid the accusation, you got to tell me where the signs are, as you're not here and can't. No, he's gonna come in tomorrow, and I'm gonna come in tomorrow. He's gonna like slam him in my face, but that's okay. That means my strategy works.
We'll have.
No, but on the divorce issue, here's my thing, and I read this, and I agree with every single point that she made, and this is one of those times where I think that we do need to, like the article gave that in that last paragraph, concept on situations of abuse. I think where the question then becomes, and where the hard parts really come in for people who are, pastors. How you doing, Ben? Good luck with this. Is when does it cross that line? Because I worry when I agree, adult happiness is not one of the considerations, because you don't put your own happiness ahead of that of your children. All right. And there are long-term consequences to children. Which sign are you holding? Don't flip the sign back and forth. Both of them? All right. I'll get to them in a second. But the question then becomes, well, what is abuse, and where does it get to that point where, yeah, this is not just a matter of adult unhappiness. This is an unhealthy relationship that is a dangerous relationship, because you've certainly got, obviously, physical abuse comes into play right away. At what point you can inflict true psychological harm on someone as well. And so I think that's the role where a lot of people need to, I'd encourage, especially Christians out there, hey, talk to your pastor, and hopefully you have a pastor that can appreciate the nuance in there and the real danger, and can assess when it's adult happiness,
right,
and when it's abuse. All right, I am not seeing I got BA's comment on YouTube now. He says, between the purple box and the countertop to your right, the other one most likely fell behind the teleprompter box to Ben's left. All right, well, you're going to blow the illusion of the set. Now, the teleprompter's behind the curtain. We cannot show people what's behind the curtain. So, all right, if you're right, BA, you will have my sincere apologies, because that's pretty amazing if you actually have been able to identify on the purple box on the countertop to our right. Oh, he means the
that box.
Yeah, what did I say to you, the Merrick? I said they probably fell behind something, didn't I? And he's identifying places they probably fell behind.
Okay.
All right, and then let's see,
Angel.
I see. Well, I saw a lot of people. You talk about a lot of people comment. I got that
Yes.
one. Yeah, we read that one already.
Oh, you did? I'm
A lot
sorry,
of people
I
jump
didn't
into
see.
marriage based on infatuation, not
Yeah.
love. Yeah, we got that one. So anyway, sorry.
No, I agree. There's nuance, and certainly if there's physical abuse happening, that's pretty obvious, and so that would be a consideration. In the terms of psychological, emotional abuse, that's where you get into more of that nuance. But if there is serious, credible threat of self-harm because of this psychological abuse, that's another consideration. It's certainly never the first option. The goal with any type of marital counseling is to reach that reconciliation point. And I think, as this article points out, too often secular courts are quick to make
Irreconcilable
that
differences. You're done.
Yeah, you slap that label on irreconcilable differences of, oh, I'm just not happy anymore. That's not an irreconcilable difference.
Especially when we see the statistics about people reconciling those differences.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the story that I had shared a while back, and I don't know that it's actually a true story, but kind of a parable where this woman walks into her pastor's office one day and says, I want a divorce. And the pastor sits down with her and says, okay, well, why do you want a divorce? And she's like, well, I don't just want a divorce. I want to get even with my husband. I want to hurt him in the same way that he's hurt me over the years, and yada, yada, yada. And the pastor issues her a challenge and says, look, if you really want a divorce, go home for 30 days. Try this out for 30 days. Now, again, this is in a situation where there's been like bickering and everything, but not physical abuse or anything. But he says, go for 30 days, treat your husband with the utmost respect, treat him like he's the best thing since sliced bread, love him even when you don't feel like doing it. Come back to me after 30 days, then tell him, once you've sufficiently made him feel like he is the best thing on earth, then drop the bomb, and that's really going to truly hurt him. And so she said, okay, I'll give it a try. 30 days go by. He doesn't hear anything from her, calls her up. He says, so about that divorce you wanted? And she said, divorce? No, actually, what I found out is I really do love my husband. So it's kind of like a story pointing to the point that she's making here, is that a lot of times what we label as unhappiness or irreconcilable differences is a matter of, like I say, with the true love stepping in, that's love that does the hard part of making that choice to love somebody. Now, again, I recognize the physical abuse and things that are just not permissible, especially where there are children involved. If it's safer to remove the child from the home, that's all considerations, and I certainly would walk through that couple with any consideration like that. But if it's just a matter of, hey, we're having arguments about certain things, well, that's reconcilable, hopefully. And, nobody gets into a marriage wanting it to end in divorce. At least I don't know anybody that does. And so
some people marry rich folks, but
I mean, yeah,
and
you
there's
got
no
those.
prenup,
Yeah, right, exactly. But no, I think we're too quick to give up on divorce, and that's
Yeah, and
certainly
if
never the
you're-
first
if-
option.
If you're looking for a tangible resource for what Ben is talking about, where about the idea of the 30 days, I don't remember that it was actually 30 days, but the Kendrick brothers when they were at Sherwood
Sherwood, yeah.
Yeah. Sherwood Baptist created a movie called Fireproof, and in Fireproof there was a fictional book that was being used called The Love Dare, and it was essentially a dare to do certain things to show your spouse that you loved them. They then wrote the actual book, and it does exist. I think it's it's not a foolproof method because both people still have to be willing to make the reconciliation happen, but it's not a bad place to start.
And from a Christian perspective, we as Christians, if we're involved in marriage, both parties need to be committed to that. I mean, both parties need to, if you really honor God's word, and understand the Bible when it talks of marriage talks about obligations on both sides, and that's the whole point, is that you're supposed to be mutually building each other up, and so you need to be committed to that. B.A. Thomas does here, first of all, speaking of my accusation of him losing the signs, he says, conveniently unprovable, the perfect defense. That's where I'm a good lawyer. And he does say, learning how to, this is a good point, I like this one, learning how to reconcile is probably a huge lesson to learn for a child in the long run. Not enough people face rejection and how to deal with it. And I think that's an important criteria as well. It's like, what lesson are you teaching your children if you do run away in situations like that? Then that's why I think that one of the studies that this author cited talked about how children of divorced parents have a higher probability of divorcing themselves because that's how they've learned to handle the situation. So it's not that the situations aren't appropriate. Obviously there are, but our priority needs to be trying to keep the marriage. And too often I think that the priorities are flip-flop. We just see we have a get out of jail free card. Let's go. Yeah. Not that our marriage is like jail, honey. I love you very much.
Well, that's another.
I just was wondering, and you read just the article, and I don't think it probably said anything about this, but a while ago, pretty long time ago, I read a book that an author wrote, and it turned out in general to be a romance story. But the premise was that husband and wife were getting divorced, and they're fighting over all the assets. But they want joint custody of the kids, and neither one of them wants to see that change. they're agreeing on joint custody and everything like that. But the question of who then deserves to keep the house becomes an issue, and the judge decides that the kids get to keep the house, and that the parents are the ones who have to leave and come during those off, Mondays through Thursdays and every other Saturday or whatever. That they're the ones who have to.
You realize you're going to make the lawyer's head explode, right? But go ahead.
Well,
It's fictional, right?
Okay, here's the thing though. I mean, in this, because it turns out to be it's a romance novel, they end up, in order to try to save money, sharing.
They share the house and they fall back in love with each other.
No,
and
they
everybody
share-
lives happily ever after,
No,
right?
no. They share an apartment when they're not there at the house. And yes, they end up realizing how much in love they are, and because they're forced to still work towards maintaining two households and what their children need from them. So, but you said it's fictional. I know of at least one family that is doing that.
Well, that's not what I was speaking. And just, B.A. Thomas does like that idea. He says, oh, man, that's great. I really wish that was a thing. I'm assuming you're referring to the kids.
What I'm saying, though, is that I happen to know a couple who that's...
Yes, but I guarantee you the kids don't own the house. Okay, the
No,
kids didn't
no.
own the house in the first place. The judge
never-
can't give the house to the kids.
I didn't mean that, but that they weren't going to decide that
They don't have to move, bounce
the
back.
kids
and
don't
forth.
have to bounce around. It's
Yeah.
the parents that have to
Yeah.
bounce around. They made and the justification was, you made this choice. Why should the kids suffer?
Well,
for it?
but you still have issues where even if it's in the same physical location, like one of the things that this article talked about was that there's different sets of rules, based on
Right.
which parent is
Yeah.
you're under, and that's still going to be the same whether it's the same house or different houses because.
Because often that's what they're not agreeing on is how
Yeah.
to parent
Yeah.
the children or.
All right, it is 10 minutes to 7. We still got one more story to go, and it's going to be a fun one. We have to get to our last story here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. So Ben's going to introduce this one, so I can be the first one to dive in because I'm chomping at the bit on this one. Go for it, Ben.
All right. Well, good old Nancy Pelosi has opened her mouth. I'm sorry. That came out a lot more snarky.
That wasn't. Yes. Gentleness and respect, Ben.
sorry.
Gentleness and respect.
All right. She has Speaker of the House has spoken in support of a bill. It's a controversial bill that would legalize abortion, quote, without limitations. And her justification for this, she actually justifies with her faith, saying that God has given us free will. She says, this bill, it's the Women's Health Protection Act, H.R. 3755, which guarantees that abortion remains legal nationwide even if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. So it's directly aimed at Roe v. Wade. Further,
I'll give you the legal analysis in a minute, honey.
it goes even further than that, not only to retain legal abortions, but it would overturn hundreds of state-level pro-life abortion restrictions. So this is the Women's Health Protection Act. And the House has passed the bill in a 218 to 211 vote with really, it's split down the party lines, Democrat to Republican. Only one Democrat jumped over to the Republicans who opposed it. And no Republicans supported it. It has to pass on to the Senate, which it's going to have trouble passing there. But anyway, so it's come under fire. Actually, one particular person, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, has criticized this. He said
Not
the bill...
Corleone, Mary Kay.
Cordileone. He said the bill is nothing short...
You can't. No.
He's called this bill nothing short of child sacrifice. To which this is what Nancy Pelosi has responded to. She said, I'm Catholic. I come from a pro-life family that's very different in their view of a woman's right to choose than I am. And then she keeps saying, she said, when you have 5 children in 6 years and 1 week, we can talk about what business it is of any of us to tell anyone what to do. It's none of our business how other people choose the size and timing of their families. Pin in that.
I'm going to pull that one out.
So she said, the Archbishop of San Francisco and I have a disagreement about who should decide this. I believe God has given us free will to honor our responsibilities. Pin in that one. So basically, the text of this bill says it is to permit healthcare providers to provide abortion services without limitations or requirements. Another pin. That's pretty much the long and short of it, although the Archbishop Salvatore has responded again, and basically to Nancy Pelosi's comment. He said, it's compared it to child sacrifice. He said, this bill is surely the type of legislation one would expect from a devout Satanist, not a devout Catholic.
Ooh. Okay. That
was...
I missed that part. Maybe I missed that there. That, and I'll say that I don't think that was an appropriate response.
Right.
I don't think that was an appropriate response. And BA does have a comment here, and I remember the conversation you're talking about, BA. He says, Ken, this is accidentally a conversation that we had a while ago. I'll sum up saying God gave us the freedom to make the wrong choice so that we could make the right one. Let me back up a little bit here.
I'm going to defend half of that Archbishop's comment. He has the right to tell her that she's not a devout Catholic.
Well, yeah, there are certain defining characters that define whether you belong to a particular group or not, and people just want to attach labels themselves, whether they agree with those defining characteristics or not. And this is not meant to be snarky, it's meant to illustrate a point, but to her free will comment, all right, where she basically says that her defense for her stance on abortion is that God has given us a free will, to which I ask her a very simple question. Jeffrey Dahmer used his free will to kill and eat people. Does the fact that God has given us a free will justify the way he used that will? So that anytime, in other words, his free will itself, all of a sudden makes something right. Some people use their free will to help others. Other people use it to eat them. Speaker Pelosi, do you have a preference between the two? Okay, I mean, it's not meant to be snarky. I'm actually channeling another apologist. It's reductio ad absurdum is what the logical approach is called, and that is okay. And BA on this, I'll agree with you. Free will itself has a value. It is a value. It is a good. No, but we don't want a world where we're all a bunch of robots and automatons, which is, ironically, we're going to come to my class here in a little bit, talking about, we talked about earlier about the understanding evil from a Christian perspective. One of the things we'll be talking about is, well, why does God allow evil to happen in this world? Well, one answer to some of the evil we see in the world is because God allows free will. And that in and of itself is a good thing. We don't want a world where we don't have free will. But it comes with consequences. If you're going to allow people to have free will, that means sometimes they're going to freely choose the good thing. Sometimes they're going to freely choose the bad thing. But that doesn't tell us anything about whether what they've done is justified. Even if we have free will and we agree free will is good, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be condemning when people use free will to make the wrong decision. And so free will itself does not justify Nancy Pelosi's position on abortion. In fact, I find it somewhat ironic that, free will is, we just talked about it, it's part of the reason why we have evil in the world. Which means, Nancy Pelosi, just because you're exercising your free will doesn't mean that what you're exercising it for is good. It could be evil. It's just free. That's all that means. And the other one, the comment that I was going to pull the pin out of, and again, not intended to be snarky too much, but intended to illustrate the point. She says, it's none of our business how other people choose the size and timing of their families. So, Ms. Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, if I have 3 children, ages 2, 6, and 12, but decide that that's too many, can I kill one of them and say it's nobody's business how I choose the size and timing of my family? I want a family that's only got 2 kids instead of 3, and the timing is I figured this out after they're born, and I just who are you to tell me that timing is bad? And all of this just goes to illustrate the underlying point. I fully expect the Speaker Pelosi would tell me, no, you can't kill a child because that child is a human life that has value. Exactly.
Yep.
And that's the point. The key question here is, what is it? That's what Scott Klusendorf likes to say. He's a leading apologist when it comes to pro-life causes. And he says the key question is always, what is it? If it is, if having an abortion is nothing more than removing an organ of the mother's body, like removing an appendix, then no justification for abortion is necessary. If it is, however, the killing of an innocent human life, just like killing a toddler would be, then no justification for abortion is sufficient. And that's stolen from Greg Kokel. I'm just citing all sorts of other people here. And so that's kind of what these attempted justifications demonstrate. And I have said many times before, and again, I'm not trying to be rude about it, but in my mind, the arguments that are advanced for the pro-choice position are some of the worst arguments I have ever come across as a Christian apologist on any other topics. I mean, we can talk about the problem of evil and why that leads some people to disbelieve in God, and I think that's a worthy conversation to have and a deeper, more meaningful conversation to have. When he gets to the pro-life versus pro-choice, I really just don't think there's anything on the side of the pro-choice argument. There's nothing. Science is not on the side. Science shows you another individual with its own DNA signature from the moment of conception. Moment of conception, don't get me started. I understand it's not a boom conceived. I get that. But the point is, that's a red herring, because when we're talking about committing abortions, we're talking about it after there is a living being there with its own DNA signature. That's not the mother's. So science doesn't support it. Philosophy doesn't support it. Logic doesn't support it. And this is why. So here she tries to use free will. We've just seen free will doesn't support it. She tries to say it's nobody's business to tell me how to do the timing, the size and timing of my family. Taking, again, reductio ad absurdum, take that exact same argument she just used and apply it to a toddler. This is another Scott Klusendorf tactic, as he calls it, trot out the toddler. Just take whatever argument is used to try to justify abortion, then use it, substitute, instead of the unborn, substitute a toddler, and see if you can still advance that argument. If you can no longer advance that argument, all of a sudden you cringe when you say that, then that tells you that it should give you reason to wonder, well, wait a minute. Okay, then if this is a living being with its own right to life inside the mother's womb, then that does change things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I read that, I like the reductio ad absurdum example that you give here, because I did think of that, but something else it made me think of too. I don't know if you've heard of, and this is maybe going on a separate tangent, but I think it is applicable to what she says here. There was a Pennsylvania lawmaker, I think, who, I don't know if you caught this in the news, but they were talking about forced sterilization for men. Have you heard about that?
I'm familiar with people advocating for it, but
yeah, there's one recently in the news who was talking about forced sterilization for men. It's either by the time they reach 40 or after their third child, whichever comes first. And so apparently, like communist China, we can't have more than 3 children. Actually, it's for them. But so this argument applies to that as well. It's none of our business to tell people the size and timing of their families.
Right.
And so any time that you get the government overreaching, here you go, in these big, broad, sweeping movements, because that's really what this is. It's a CBA.
And with the gonging of my phone alarm, I bid you all good evening. Yes, good evening, BA. Enjoy twitching.
Yes.
He's
Being on Twitch.
He's on Twitch. I'll give him the same shout out I always do. Indecision, INDYCISSION. He's probably already gone, so I can't ask him what he's playing tonight. But if you like watching gamers on Twitch, highly recommend go check out BA after our show is over. He'll be up and running by then, I am sure.
Yeah. And thanks for watching, BA.
Sorry.
Thanks for telling us where the signs might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, same argument. And then here you go with the sweeping generalizations. Really what this bill is about, it's without limits or requirements. I mean, so now they've already been advocating for, teenagers, like teenage pregnancies. They can go without their parents' permission, even if they're minors or anything, to go and get abortions. Presumably that's what it means, without requirements or things like that. And so again, you reduce that reductio ad absurdum. How young does the person have to be without any kind of parental consent to get an abortion or anything like that? So it just it's problematic on all sorts
you think people can go get an abortion without parental consent, but they can't drink yet, or sometimes they can't drive yet. You know, so yeah.
Join the military.
Not allowed to vote. So he's like, they're not old enough and mature enough to make that decision, but they can make a decision about whether or not to have the child.
Can't run a car.
Right. Yeah, and so it's just problematic on so many different fronts. But I will say, yeah, the argument about free will, it just doesn't.
It's a bad argument. It's a bad argument. The way Pelosi, I think BA BA. I know he's not watching us anymore. The way he expressed it, it's a little. I don't agree that we should be free to make certain choices just because we have free will. But the way Pelosi articulated, it just makes no sense. I have free. God gave me free will. Therefore, anything I choose to do with that free will must be okay. Is essentially what she's saying.
Right.
Let's see. I'm glad he brought this up. This is Mr. Funky Dude says that's a false equivocation. A toddler does not nor cannot violate a person's personal autonomy. Different argument. Okay, you're raising the personal autonomy argument. All right, this is the classic violinist episode argument. And the idea, the personal autonomy argument is where First of all, I would disagree with you. A toddler absolutely can violate a person's autonomy. You know, you want bodily. I mean, there are certain obligations that a mother has. I mean, you can't. A mother can't just drop a child off in the middle of the street because they don't want them anymore. So while you're right, there's not the physical connection there anymore. There is still a moral connection that is there. So. We talk about bodily autonomy. Well, you know, when you actually don't even use the bodily autonomy, which is usually the way it's phrased, you use personal autonomy. And so I will disagree with you there. A toddler absolutely can have an impact on a person's personal autonomy.
And sometimes bodily. Talk to a breastfeeding mother.
Yeah. But the argument here is that there is a, you know, it's the classic way it's presented. And I'm trying to remember the lady, a philosopher's name. She first raised this in the 1970s, and I'm blanking on her name right now. But in all honesty, and I will give you this, Mr. Funky Dude, it's Funky Dude for people that can't see it. Probably the best argument, I still don't think it's a good argument, but the best argument in favor of abortion is that, let's say that you have you're walking down a blind alley one time, and you may even know, let's say you even know that if you walk down this alley, there's a risk that you're going to be smacked on the head by a bunch of muggers who want to, Funky Dude says here, you can make the same reductive argument about thou shalt not murder is war murder. No, you can't, because, I mean, there's a difference. What's the definition of murder versus war? And then you get into just war theory. I don't want to be on forever and go down that path. I want to stick to the first thing that you said, okay, about the autonomy argument. And he says that's a stretch. Personal is the same as bodily. No, it is not. I'm sorry, you're not going to agree. Absolutely, it is not. All right, if you don't think that someone's autonomy can be impacted by a child, a toddler that they have, you do not have the freedom to choose to do whatever you want, whenever you want, when you have a baby or a child at home. So absolutely, I cannot disagree with you more on that one. Personal autonomy and bodily autonomy are absolutely not the same thing. Ask any mother with a newborn. Okay, that's not correct. But I don't want to get distracted. I want to focus on the original argument.
It's Judith Jarvis Thompson.
Thank you, Judith Jarvis Thompson.
Thompson, yeah.
Thompson,
Not
yeah.
Tomp with a P, but Thompson.
And so the idea is you're walking down an alley and you can get, you know, and you even know that there's a risk you're going to get beat over the head, knocked out by a bunch of people who want to take you and hook you up to a concert violinist, the best violinist ever known. But this violinist has some kind of medical condition such that he's going to die unless he's hooked up to your body. Okay. And so they'd say, but it's okay. You're only going to be hooked up for 9 months. Okay. And then once you have this 9 months, the concert violinist will be completely healed, able to go wherever they want to. And in the meantime, you can then go about your merry way. All right. So the argument goes, and they say, do you have the right to disconnect yourself from the concert violinist? And of course, the answer, the conclusion they're trying to get you to come to is, of course you can, because no other person has the absolute right to just say that you're going to get hooked up and you have to sustain their body. And you have the right to disconnect yourself if you choose. Two problems I'm going to say with that argument. And Funky Dude obviously disagrees with me on my disagreement with him about he just says, of course you don't. You're right, I don't. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. But again, autonomy is autonomy. If you think I'm wrong, sir, then you need to explain to me how a mother of a newborn at home has the autonomy to do what she wants when she wants. If you can't answer that question, it's funny that nowhere in the Bible does it talk about abortion other than telling you how to do it, but you will argue in the minutiae of personal autonomy. All right, Funky Dude, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor right now, okay? Obviously, I disagree with that right now, but what you're doing is I'm trying to answer the first comment you made. And you're just throwing out comment after comment after comment, raising different arguments, all right? Give me the chance to respond to your first argument, okay? And let's stay focused, because there's no way I'm going to be able to respond to every single thing you're putting out there on this show. It's already after time when we're frankly supposed to be off the air, all right? But also, it gets distracting. We need to stay focused. So please let me finish responding to your first argument. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about, the bodily, and I'll even use the term bodily autonomy for you. Okay, the bodily autonomy argument. That's how Judith Jarvis Thompson articulated it. So we'll go with that. Okay, here are the problems with that argument. All right, number one, abortion is not merely disconnecting life support by any stretch of the imagination. It is not. This is science. This is medicine. This is not something you can disagree with. Okay, I'm sorry, you can't. It is unlike just disconnecting. It is an affirmative act of killing. It is. It is, whether it be dismemberment, suction, things like that. You are taking actions that are actively killing the child. Okay, you're not just disconnecting. Leaving that aside for the moment, because you may disagree with me on that one. I don't think you can, and you may think, well, even if it is, it doesn't make a difference. What that argument leaves out is the element of personal responsibility. And we're going to do another one of those reductio ad absurdum exercises, because I don't think you want the consequences of where your argument logically leads you, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, and I'm not going to talk about, we're not going to universalize the exception. We're not talking about rape, incest cases, because that's less than 1.5% or 1% of all abortions, okay? The overwhelming majority of elective abortions are somebody had consensual intercourse and then decides they don't want the child, all right? In those situations, people are very much aware that there is a risk of pregnancy anytime, no matter what birth control you're using, all right? There is a risk of pregnancy when you engage in intercourse. All right. And we as a society also put a moral responsibility there. Let me give you an example. In other words, there's a moral responsibility, a moral duty that a parent owes to a child. All right. Don't believe me? Do you believe that fathers should pay child support? All right. Because here's where your argument leads you. If you try to say that a mother, the woman who gets pregnant, has the right to say, I didn't intend to get pregnant, and therefore I am going to say I don't want to have, I have the right to deny moral responsibility for this child, all right, therefore I can abort it, all right? Then consistently speaking, you need to allow fathers to say, I didn't intend for a pregnancy to result either, therefore I should be able to deny responsibility for this child and not owe any responsibility to the upbringing of this child. You can't distinguish, logically you can't distinguish between the two. So if you want to say that the mother does not owe a moral responsibility because of her knowing actions that she took, that she knew that, anybody knows that pregnancy could result, that creates a moral responsibility for her to care for another innocent human life. If you want to say the mother does not have that moral obligation, then neither does the father. And people ask me sometimes, I saw somebody post a meme a while ago that says, oh, well, you pro-life people, you really want to be pro-life? You say the mother doesn't have this has to support the child and can't abort the child? Well, then father should be paying child support from conception. To which I respond, yes, they should. I agree with you. Let's write that law. Let's go out there right now and do it. Because yes, when you engage in intercourse, knowing that pregnancy could result, and whether you intended it or not, pregnancy does in fact result. It creates an innocent human being, which any science will tell you is a unborn innocent human life, all right? You have a moral responsibility to care for that life. Mothers do, fathers do. If I get knocked on the head and dragged and hooked up to an unknown violinist, I did not knowingly do anything to create a moral obligation between me and that violinist, all right? That's where the parallel fails.
What's interesting when you're talking about responsibility, moral responsibility to the child, it's interesting in Nancy Pelosi's statement here, going back to the article, she says, God has given us a free will to do what? To honor our responsibilities.
Yeah.
So what responsibilities is she referring to? Certainly, I hope not the responsibility to abort the child. It should be to honor our responsibilities. Here again, the right choice or the wrong choice. We have that free will to make the choice, but our responsibilities should be to that child.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you do have, and so that's my response, is there is a difference between the two. When you engage in intercourse knowing it could result in the pregnancy and could result in the creation of an innocent human being, then you then have a moral responsibility to that human being that you then created through your voluntary act, all right? That factor is absent in the violinist episode. And so here we say, so there's a risk of pregnancy, but not also a risk of abortion? No, absolutely not. Tell me where there's a biological, unless you're trying to go here, and this is, again, a false comparison. And maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, and if I am, I apologize. Maybe this isn't what you're intending to say. But what a lot of people say is, look how many pregnancies end in miscarriages to begin with. You know this X percentages don't even get carried to term to begin with just because the body doesn't. Right.
Yeah.
But that's not a willful act of killing the child. In those situations, if that's what the body does, that's what the body does. But that's not another human being taking an affirmative act to end that life. So that's also not a parallel
You'd be
situation.
charged with, you say there was a pregnant mother who somebody pushed down the stairs and it resulted in a miscarriage. That person would be liable. The person who assaulted the mother.
Yeah.
At least biblically speaking, it's in the Bible that if two men are fighting and a pregnant woman is nearby and results in the death of the child, then that they are to be held responsible.
Yeah. So I don't think arguments hold up, and I think that, sir, you need to. Here we go. So there shouldn't be any car insurance because you know the risk of driving every time you get in a car, right? Let me ask you a question. If you get in a car and you're at fault and you cause
I'm sorry,
the accident-
did he just equate an abortion with car insurance?
Yeah, hold
Is
on.
that what I'm hearing?
If hold on. If so, you get in a car, sir, and you cause the accident. All right, you are the one who brought about the injuries. Should you be held responsible? Because in their abortion parallel with what you're saying, guess who is the innocent driver? It's the baby. All right. The baby's the one who's being harmed by someone else's either negligence or intentional action. All right. So your argument does not hold up. I'm sorry. None of this trumps a person's right to bodily autonomy. Yeah, it does. All right. You're going circle. You haven't answered the argument. All right. I think we're done. Thank you very much for your comments. But at this point, all you've done is gone back and stated what you said at the beginning. I have shown you why it does make a difference on a person's bodily autonomy, because you have a responsibility. A mother has a responsibility to that child. A father has a responsibility to that child. You cannot make that argument without also at the same time saying fathers shouldn't be able to do, they should be able to do the same thing. They shouldn't have to pay child support. I don't think that's a conclusion you want to go down. So we're done. Thank you very much, though, for your comment. I do appreciate it. I mean, I know we don't agree, and I didn't convince you of anything, and I get it. But I do appreciate your comments. I genuinely do. These are the types of interactions that I think we need to have so we can have better understanding.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your comment. We do have to go, and I know we're a 30-second delay, so you may be commenting now while we're talking, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to get to it. I apologize for that. But the show's supposed to end by 7, and it's 7:15. So we do have to get going. Maybe next time we want to talk about this, we should put it at the top of the show.
Sure.
And I invite you, sir, please come back. We are here. We're here every Wednesday at 5:30. We will be here next Wednesday at 5:30. And then, like I said, 2 weeks from now, we will not be on the air. But then the Wednesday after that, we will be back, and we'll do something to haze Ben a little bit at that point in time. So thank you very much for the conversation, everybody. There's so many people who have commented tonight. All right, he disagrees with me. That's fine. I've said my piece, sir. Mr. Funky Dude, I thank you for your participation. B.A. Thomas, Angel, running. I don't want to forget about Pastor J. Is there anybody else that I'm forgetting? I don't know, but
Brian
Brownell. Yes, thank you. All of you. It's been a very stimulating night. I appreciate the conversation, and I'm going to say thank you, Ben, for the show tonight, and thank you for all the previous shows as well.
Thank you, Ken.
If you don't know why I'm getting all verklempt, watch the beginning of the show.
Nice word.
And thank you, Mary Kay,
Thank you,
for your help here this evening. Thank you all for watching. Hope to see you next week at 5:30. God bless.